We've done it, another decade of Stephen King wrapped. But before we go into a new millennium, it's time to compile another ranking. So here is my countdown of 1990s Stephen King. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is the place where we talk Stephen King. Now, usually I go through each of Stephen King's works and give you 19 reasons to read each one. But in my last video, we hit Hearts in Atlantis, which means we have reached the end of the 1990s. And as is the way here, when I get to the end of the decade, we can't move on before I've done a little countdown. So in this video, I'm going to go through my personal ranking of 1990s King, similar to what I did for the 1970s and for the 1980s. Why not go and watch those videos when you're done with this one? Now I should stress, this is my personal ranking. This is not an attempt to be a definitive ranking. That's not really possible because we all like different things, and that's a good thing. But I do love hearing your lists. So let me know what your favourite book of the 90s is. Let me know what your least favourite King book of the 90s is. Heck, if you want to, share your entire list with me. Just drop them in the comments below. I'd love to check them out. Also, there are no spoilers to worry about in this video. I'm not going to be discussing plot. I'm just going to be rattling through the books, letting you know from worst to best which ones I like and a little insight as to why I like them. But no spoilers, so stick around for the whole thing, okay? Okay, let's do this. There are 16 books to go through in this ranking from the 1990s. So here we go. My ranking of 1990s Stephen King from worst to best. Let's do it. So at the bottom is 4 Past Midnight, comfortably the decade's weak point and probably the only book I don't really like. Although I do have a soft spot for Secret Window, Secret Garden, or Secret Garden, Secret Window, whatever the fuck it's called. That's a little Easter egg for all you movie fans out there. This one was written at a tough time for King. He was getting sober and he was suffering from a lot of self-doubt, and I think you can sense it in these pages. So next, Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Now, normally I love his short story collections, but this one feels like it's got a different motivation behind it. Whereas Skeleton Crew and Night Shift felt like classic albums, really well thought out and really loved, this one feels a bit more like a collection of B-sides, rarities and remixes that kind of been thrown out there. Yeah, sure, some bits hit and some bits are exciting, but there's a lot of nope in here as well. And as you can see, it's too fucking long. So next up, The Regulators. I do feel kind of bad having this one this low, but it's just where it sits in the overall ranking of the 90s. There are no bad books from this point, which is pretty impressive considering we've still got another 13 to go. But I really liked this one first time around, and I probably liked it more on reread. I just like the rest of his output better. But even so, third best Bachman for me, I reckon. So, I'm bracing myself for the hate in the comments for this, but up next, Wizard and Glass. Undoubtedly a terrific, fantastic, sensational book. But for me, this is where it sits, and it only just edged out The Regulators. It was very close to being below The Regulators. I just don't need 800 pages of backstory, and I don't really like most of the characters in this, and I'm not as big a towerhead as many people might expect me to be. It's undoubtedly a terrific book, I've already said that, but on reread for me it really dropped, and when I forced myself to think about where I'd put it in the overall ranking for the decade, this is where it sits. I would say don't at me, but you probably already have, so bring it on. Up next, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. Cracking little story that gets a lot done in not many pages. Would I rank this higher if I cared about baseball? Possibly, but even so, it's still a lot of fun. So up next is Desperation, a huge, intimidating and wild book that's opening is so scary and visceral it won't help but have you completely hooked. The only reason it doesn't get higher on my list is because of the character David Carver, who is a pretentious, annoying little twat. But even so, there's so much in here that is just fantastic. It's really worth a read. So up next, Hearts in Atlantis, a powerful collection of really personal writing from King that does so much more than just be horror stuff, as I said in the video for this particular book. 5 linked novellas, the first 2 in particular are exceptional and definitely worth seeking out even if you ignore the rest. And for me, just loads of heart obviously, given the name, and loads of great stuff to take away from this book. We're now at the point, from my view anyway, where everything is excellent on this list. This is still excellent, just the least excellent, if that makes sense. So up next, The Wastelands, probably the best Dark Tower book, and certainly the book that took me from being interested in the Dark Tower to invested in Roland and his quartet. It would go higher if I cared more about the Dark Tower, but honestly, everything else in the decade he did beyond this that I haven't mentioned yet, I do enjoy more. But as I said earlier, we're in excellent territory, and this is excellent. So up next, Storm of the Century. Now, is this cheating, including this in this list? No, I'm holding a book of it, and we're talking best books of the 90s by Stephen King. As I said in my recent video about this one is fantastic. Holds up really well. One of the best King villains ever, and one of the best endings ever. Get on it. Up next, Bag of Bones. Now sound the guilty pleasure alarm. I am fully aware that this should be way lower down my list. This is so jam-packed with too much plot and too much middle-aged man horniness that you feel really dirty reading it, and yet I just have loved it both times I've gone through it. So the result, it is way too high up my list, and I do not care. So up next, Gerald's Game, and the first of a few books that have actually overtaken Bag of Bones in my overall King ranking since going through my chronological reread. Now, I loved Gerald's Game first time around, but second time it just cut even deeper. Some of the scenes in here are so dark, and that scene in particular, fuck. So up next, Rose Madder, often overlooked, but a real gem in his back catalogue. An opening so shocking that will just force you to continue reading, and the rest of it, the story is good enough to keep you in and even hold your hand through some of the weirder twists and turns and some of the cartoonish characters. Oh, and all of that, as well as a really terrific female lead. Vulnerable, yes, hurt, yes, but angry also, and that's what really nudges it up the list for me. So up next, The Green Mile. Now I imagine people compiling their own lists will probably have either Wizard and Glass or The Green Mile sitting at the top spot when they think of 90s King. And I totally get it, right? It's The Green Mile. Quite a fantastic achievement to have done something so hooking and gripping over 6 parts, and to be so jam-packed with heartwarming and heartbreaking, life-affirming moments. It's a fucking sensational knockout. So in at number 3 for me is Dolores Claiborne. A book I was not expecting to end up this highly on my ranking of 1990s King, but it's really shot up over the course of my chronological reread. Now I know the weird structure, no chapters, almost a continuous monologue, and the weird accent and dialect could put a few people off, but for me it just really helped me get invested in this story. I think Dolores is such a great character, it's a terrific story from start to finish, and it's a real roller coaster too. It just gives you everything you could want from a really excellent drama, with a few horror bits thrown in as well. So my second favourite King book of the 1990s is Needful Things. Hands up who likes chaos. Hello, you will love this. Yes, it's cartoonish. Yes, it's over the top. Yes, it's really silly at times. Leland Gaunt is a strange character. Alan Pangborn is a legendary character with magic hands. And it's a chance to spend a whole novel in Castle Rock. What's not to like? Oh, and all of that, of course, set against the backdrop of this tongue-in-cheek black comedy about 1980s greed. It's awesome. Just get over yourself and read it. So, my favourite Stephen King book of the 1990s is Insomnia. Yep, Insomnia. A book I really loved first time around, before I'd even read any Dark Tower stuff, and therefore the Dark Tower connections in here meant absolutely nothing to me, and a book that second time around has just continued to move up my list and continued to be something that I absolutely adore. Some of the writing in this at the start and at the end in particular is arguably some of King's best. There's a whole host of great stuff going on in here. To be honest, pretty much everything I could wish for from a King book. And I even love this book's flaws, of which it does have some, not ashamed to admit that, but I think it's still a fantastic book. And for me, it's my favourite book from probably my favourite decade of Stephen King's writing. Certainly it's his most interesting and most diverse and most experimental decade, and save for a couple of books, I think he hits the nail on it every single time. Insomnia, for me, just sits right on top of that list and is my favourite. So there we go, that was my ranking of 1990 Stephen King books, but let me know yours in the comments below. Let me know your favourite, let me know your least favourite, or if you're feeling spicy, let me know your entire list. And let me know what you think of me placing Wizard and Glass so far down my own list. I'm ready for you, bring it on. If you liked that video, there's loads more on my channel, so do click around. There's my own personal rankings of 70s and 80s King, there's 19 reasons to read loads of different books, and there's a few other specials thrown in there. To be honest, can't really remember them off the top of my head right now, but click around, you'll find them. And if you watch some more and you enjoy them, maybe consider subscribing too, so you don't miss any videos in the future. There's a whole load more to come, so every reason to stick around. And lastly, if you want to say hi on Instagram, I'm at Dave Musson. My DMs are always open to chat King. Come and let me know what you think of my thoughts of 1990s King and what you're looking forward to me covering as we go into the noughts. That mention of the noughts is a handy point for me to sign off because that's where we'll be going next time I'm back here on this channel. Thanks for stopping by. It's been great fun running through the 90s with you. And let's see where we go next. Take care.